I'm away. Yeah, I'm traveling with a group at my job. So it's like a little extra money and I get to travel. So that's nice. Yes, I won't be here. Yeah, looking forward to it. Thank you.
Got out of the car here. Oh my God. Right.
Feeling all right, aren't you?
Good.
Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. I see that more and more of the fall attire is coming as it gets colder and colder. But it's good to be here with you this morning as we can enjoy the warmth of the fellowship and the friendship and the conversations that we have together with one another this morning. And welcome to you if you are either visiting or whether you're a longtime friend or member or someone who watches online. We welcome you with us this morning. And as we lift our hearts in worship this morning, would you please join me in the words of the call to worship that are found in the bulletin. The heavens are telling the glory of God, and all creation speaks volumes of God's handiwork.
Each sunrise proclaims God's faithfulness, and the night reveals the Creator's law.
Without a word being spoken, all creation bears witness to the goodness of the Lord.
So too may we join in witness of all creation. May the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be God's signature in the world.
Let us worship God. Would you please join me this morning in singing our first hymn, 276, Great is Thy Faithfulness.
Thy faithfulness, O God, my
reconciling work in Jesus Christ and the mission of reconciliation to which Christ has called the church is the heart of the gospel in any age. Our generation stands in particular need of the reconciliation of Christ. So therefore, we confess our need, our confidence in God's forgiving grace. Would you please join me in the prayer confession found in the bulletin?
God of compassion and mercy, we bring our wounded selves, our divided society, and our broken world, seeking your healing and transforming grace. It is easy for us to point the finger at others, yet we know that we all need your forgiveness. Break down the walls of hatred, distrust, and bitterness, and open a way for us to reach one another in truth and love. Enable us to build a society where all can belong, to share our gifts in mutual respect, and to seek for the new future which you offer us through Jesus Christ. Amen.
Jesus Christ is the one who came down to earth. Christ who was with God, the Creator. And even though Christ could have remained in heaven, he came down to serve us, to show us a way forward, to make ways for us to seek renewal, to seek reconciliation, to seek restoration can be achieved in our broken world. Mending those relationships, we can be assured that we have forgiveness, that we have compassion, that we have the things to sustain us along our journey of life and faith. So therefore, friends, believe the good news of the gospel.
In Jesus Christ, we are forgiven.
Amen.
You may be seated. So I had a friend who had gone on a trip down, I think it was to the Bahamas, and when he came back, he brought me this globe here that was hand-carved, I assume, made out of wood. And of course, the country's on it. It's more for aesthetic purposes. It doesn't really tell you what things are accurately. But it made me think about the many different parts of our lives this morning as we celebrate World Communion Sunday. And particularly how appropriate that is for us to then gather around the table where Christ and his disciples broke bread and shared a meal. Which made me think of another question, is what is your favorite food? I know that sounds random, but what kind of food do you enjoy?
Pizza.
Pasta? Oh, I heard pasta. What else?
Pizza.
Pizza? Yeah. What else?
Wonderful hamburger.
Mashed potatoes? Okay. What? Chocolate? I don't know if chocolate's a food on its own. Well, you know,
It is.
a vegetable, okay. So, as you heard, yes, I'm sure you have many different foods, and as someone who is learning how to cook different things, it's been a pleasure to learn how to cook all those different things. But a lot of the food, I think, that we have named here as being personal favorites of ours, they're not all native to this one place. They're not native to Mahopac. They're certainly not native necessarily to even this country that we live in. Things like pasta or chocolate certainly come from other parts of the world. And yet I'm reminded of how in those foods, when we sit around a table with one another and we share those stories, we're reminded how there are so many things that connect us, and there's so many things that we can share over good food and good stories. So as we celebrate World Communion Sunday this day with people across the country and certainly other places around the world, let us remember how food and stories and the fellowship that we have around the table are ways for us to make connections with people who we might not have had connections with before. Good morning.
Good morning.
Please join me in the prayer of illumination. Gracious
God,
You do not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from your mouth. Make us hungry for this heavenly food, that we nourish us today in the ways of eternal life. Amen.
Today's first reading is from Lamentations chapter 3, verses 19 through 26. The thought of my affliction and my homelessness is wormwood and gall. My soul continually thinks of it and is bowed down within me. But this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore I will hope in him. The Lord is good to those who wait for him, to the soul that seeks him. It is good that one should wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
morning, which I'm actually staying on track with this week, comes from the Gospel according to Luke chapter 17, verses 5 to 10. So hear now the word of the Lord. The apostles said to the Lord, "Lord, increase our faith." The Lord replied, "If you had faith the size of a mustard seed, you could say to this mulberry tree, 'Be uprooted and planted in the sea,' and it would obey you. Who among you would say to your slave who has just come in from plowing or tending sheep in the field, 'Come here at once and take your place at the table'? Would you rather not say to them, 'Prepare supper for me, put on your apron and serve me while I eat and drink. Later, you may eat and drink'? Do you thank the slave for doing what was commanded? So you also, when you have done all that you were ordered to, say, 'We are worthless slaves. We have done only what we ought to have done.'" This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Let us pray. God, we give you thanks that as we gather together, we can remember that you are the one who came down, that you turned to the world on its head, that you became not only the master, but also the one to set an example by serving us as well. As you welcome us to your table, as we are reminded that all are welcome to your table, may the words and meditations of our hearts allow us to see your work in the problem. We ask this in your most holy name.
Amen.
In seminary, we would joke about what is known as imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome, for those who aren't familiar with the term, is the feeling like you don't belong because you don't seem to fit in or because everyone else seems to be so much better than you. It's a common experience and one that doesn't seem to go away. But it's not only pastors who continue to experience imposter syndrome. Most of us could probably speak to what it feels like to never be at ease with who you are in either your work, your church, or even the relationship you have with God. I think most of us in seminary try to double down on our work or studies in order to break the chains of imposter syndrome. If only we study more, if only we worship a little harder, if that's possible, things would be different. They would be better. We try to do this in our own lives. We try to shake ourselves of any doubts, any insecurities, by telling ourselves that if we just do a little more, things will be okay. God will be happy if I just keep busy, and surely God will hear my prayers now if I only commit myself a little harder, do a little more to get more done. But you see, God has already done that hard work. God has done the hard work. And so, therefore, we are justified, we are made whole, we are made right by that grace alone. There are some challenges for us in this morning's text as we wrestle with it as it comes to us from the Gospel according to Luke. For example, how do we decipher the core message that Jesus is trying to convey as we sift through the complex imagery of slavery? What good news can come out of that kind of relationship? We shouldn't dismiss Jesus' use of slavery in this morning's reading. But if we're able to set it aside for a moment as part of Jesus' culture, we might then see what is at the heart, the good news that is at the heart of this morning's message. Because you see, too often we try to earn God's favor. But Christ's sacrifice for us means that indentured servitude is not necessary. Christ has freed us. Christ has brought us who were on the lowest rung up to a place of great honor. A place where we are valued, a place where we are members who are loved and cherished. You see, because nothing we do will make us more righteous. Nothing we do will make us better than those who are around us, as much as we try. The disciples cry out to God, saying, "Increase our faith, but God has already increased our faith, their faith and ours. It's only a matter now of whether or not we are using that faith, whether we are applying it to our lives and applying it to the people and things who are around us as well. Because as I've already said, the hard work has been done. God has taken care of that. So there's no excuse, no reason why our lives should not reflect fully the mercies and love we have received. Because you see, the more mercy and the more love we give, the more mercy and the more love we will receive. We can't expect to receive those things if we are not willing to give them from ourselves first. And we're able to give and receive just as much because it's possible, because Christ has taken on the role of master and the role of slave in order to bring us into that right relationship with God. Today, as I have mentioned, is World Communion Sunday, a tradition that dates back to 1933. It's a day where we remember the unity we have with our sisters and brothers, the unities that we have with people of different backgrounds, different races, creeds, and genders. A day when we are reminded that all, and I mean all, are welcome to the table that Christ has prepared. It's why we don't set up walls around this table. On this World Communion Sunday, we are reminded that Christ has done the work necessary for the saving or the healing of our souls. Christ has freed us from the burden of worrying about whether we are right with God. So we have the time then to rekindle in our hearts the gifts, the spiritual gifts and other gifts that we have that have been bestowed upon us. You see that if we neglect to utilize the good gifts God has given to us, the consequences are pretty clear. As the writer of the book of Lamentations reminds us, that when we neglect God's gifts, we'll find that it can lead to desolation, it can lead to isolation, and it can lead to despair. I think that if we were to look around, we would find that the state of our communities, the state of our humanity, is at stake when we fail to take seriously the call of God to share the gifts that have been given to us with those who are around us. It's not something we can hold on to greedily with two hands. There is a necessity, an urgency for us today to heed this call of Christ. In a cultural climate that seems to be so focused on erecting barriers and isolationism, the act of breaking bread, the act of drinking from the cup, reminds us that we are all connected. This act reminds us that we don't have to fight for some scarce resource, because God's grace is not a scarce resource. So we have no excuse not to go out and share that joy, that good news, those good gifts that God has given. Last night, I came home around 12 in the morning after celebrating 60 years of outdoor ministry at Johnsonburg Camp and Retreat Center. 60 years of faithfulness, 60 years of joy, 60 years of trusting that the gifts God had given them would continue to touch the lives of young people for decades to come. There were times of hardship, times when it seemed like a desert, times when it seemed like there would be no room to grow. But even in those hard times, they were able to see how things also flourished. Because through all of that time, there was a persistent belief that God would lead them to where they needed to go in order to do the things that needed to be done to serve their surrounding community. And as I thought about the many years Johnsonburg had committed itself to outdoor ministry, I thought about the history of our own church here in Mahopac. Because certainly we have a long history. We have over 200 years of history. 200 years of ministry, 200 years worth of hard times and good times and everything in between. I'm sure that you can remember the hard times, the times when things were bad. But can you remember how God was still moving in those places, both high and low? Because even at our lowest point, God was there helping us along the way, encouraging us, reminding us that if we were to look, to trust a little harder, that God had already taken on most of the heavy work. And that reassurance should be freeing, because we should feel as though a great weight has been lifted. Because that means the passions, the legacies of those who have come before us aren't resting squarely on our own shoulders. It allows us then to pursue the gifts and the joys that we can offer to each other in the here and now. You see that I have some things written on, well, I don't really have anything written on the board just yet. But as you can see, as appropriate for World Communion Sunday, I've drawn a table and bread and cup, and this amalgamous blob that surrounds it represents the earth. You can sort of see Florida there. I went to seminary, not art school. But what are the things, if we were to let God take care of the big things? What are those gifts then that we can rekindle in ourselves? The energy that we can direct to doing things that allow us to flourish instead of remaining just in the hard places. Now I think about my passion for music as being one of those gifts that I have been allowed to pursue as a gift I have rekindled. What are some of the gifts you feel that you can bring to the table? And it doesn't just have to be talents. It can be your own characteristics as well. Friendship?
Communication.
Hospitality.
Lending a hand. Lending a hand.
Nourishment. Nourishment, I'm going to add food. Well, I'm going to add nourishment, body, and spirit. Robert, were you good at that one? You look like you had some. Mary, did you have one? Or I saw you picking on stuff.
Acceptance.
Acceptance? Who said that one? Oh. As you can see, there are a lot of things that are on that board right now that are a part of each and every one of our lives. And it would be my hope, my challenge, that we can focus on those things, those gifts, those passions. Because I think that if we find that if we were to let God take care of the big stuff, that our time and our energy invested in our gifts and passions would allow us to see the unexpected, to be led to the place where God desires for us. You see, the table's been set for us. The table's been set for us by the one who is both the master and the slave. The table is ready to nourish us as we love, as we serve, as we grow and rekindle the gifts and the talents we have to offer. So my challenge for you today on this World Communion Sunday is to reignite those gifts, to reignite those talents, to reignite all those passions that you bring to the table. It's time we take an inward look so that our lives may be a truer outward reflection of the hope we find in God. The one who serves and the one who asks that we take a step out in faith. God has the big things covered, and God has already increased our faith. So I think it's fair to say then that we can trust in that promise. So why don't we go out together, seeing where God is calling us to go. Amen. Our next hymn is an insert in the bulletin, and you might have seen me break out this instrument before. But on a World Communion Sunday, I think a banjo is quite interesting, because it reminds us of how even our music is all connected. We think of this instrument as being one associated mostly with American music, but it has its roots deeply connected from traditions in Africa. And yet it made its way over here and has evolved and taken root in many different kinds of music and cultures. So why don't we join together in this hymn? I'll sort of play an intro for us here.
Tell them, fathers, noble souls.
we work to as we continue on in our church, are there any announcements that people Lloyd?
I don't know if everybody knows, but in the second Saturday from today, the 29th, we're going to have a dinner and dance with as many folks as will come, including 19. What did I say?
29.
Anyway, including people from the community who we kind of say we like to have communion and stuff with, brotherhood. Anyway,
Thank you.
do as you will.
Suzanne?
So we had a rubber sale on Friday and Saturday, and it was a great success. And that's for all the people who came to help. Our rubber sales are the biggest fundraisers that we have and also the most work. Whether it's collecting items for the sale throughout the year and storing in the shed, or setting up the tables and the racks, or bringing things out from the shed and setting up for the sale itself, helping out the sale, helping people bring their purses to their cars, bagging up the stuff after the sale, and people brought it all over to various nonprofit organizations in the area. And we couldn't do it without all the help that we had. And so I just want to thank everyone who helped, and there are a lot of people here who helped who were not here, especially Alice, that she works so much throughout all our run sales to make it a success. So if anyone helped, please stand so we can acknowledge you.
Joanne, I saw your hand.
I just wanted to point out an error in the insert about the Jan Peak meal. I actually cooked the meal with Rosemary, and it was her first time. So I wanted everybody to know that she's the person you thank who worked with me for Jan Peak. Thanks.
Any other announcements? Well, I should say then, if there's no other announcements, next week is the 13th. Next week is the 13th. Yeah. My dates are all mixed up. Next week, which is the 13th at 1:30, we'll be meeting at Temple Beth to participate in the crop walk. And as you can see, there are some names listed in one of the inserts, but also if you would like to still walk with us, there is an opportunity to do so. So even if you haven't necessarily were able to raise any funds, but if you still want to walk with us and give us your support, you are more than welcome to join us as well. So I'm looking forward to doing that next week with you all and with folks from Temple Beth and a few other churches from the area as well. So that'll be a great event. Rose,
Just going to add to that, there's a lot more benches along the way now if you need a rest.
well, if there are no other announcements, let us take a moment now to reflect on the things we have been given as we give back to God a portion of what we have received.
Sorry, it's right. It's okay.
join us in saying the words of the affirmation of faith, the Apostles' Creed, traditional version, found on page 4. I believe in God, Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, and Jesus Christ, his only Son, our Lord, who was conceived by the Holy Ghost, born of the Virgin Mary, suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, dead, and buried. He descended into hell. The third day he rose again from the dead. He ascended into heaven, and sitteth on the right hand of God the Father Almighty. From thence he shall come to judge the quick and the dead. I believe in the Holy Ghost, the Holy Catholic Church, the communion of saints, the forgiveness of sins, the resurrection of the body, and the life everlasting. Amen. You may be seated. Friends, this is a table that has been prepared by Christ. It's a table where all are welcome, a table where people come from north and south, east and west to be at table with one another. It is a place where there are no barriers, no walls, no hurdles to climb over, because Christ welcomes all. It's a table that is prepared, and it's a table that is ready for all those who are hungry and thirsty. Hungry and thirsty for their souls to be nourished. So therefore, friends, may the Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Lift up your hearts.
Lift them up to the Lord.
Let us give thanks to the Lord our God.
It is right to give our thanks and praise.
Almighty God, we give you thanks on this day as we join together. On this day where we break the bread and drink from the cup. A day where we are reminded how we are connected with all the saints who have come before us. How we are connected even more so to those who are around us today, who break bread and share the cup. God, on this day of unity, as we remember World Communion Sunday, how we celebrate with our sisters and brothers around the world, may we seek to do and act, live in a way that reflects your justice, your compassion, your love, your mercy, as we seek to continue to be your hands and feet. And as we partake of these elements, may they nourish us. May they give us strength. May they give us energy and encouragement to do the hard work you call us to do. We remember, though, that this hard work is not done alone, that those who have come before us were faithful. How you called women and men of all times and in all places to lead us, to show us your way, to set forward an example for us on how we can live a life that is filled with your love and mercy. God, as we remember these things, as we remember the great choir of angels who sits up with you, we praise you, joining our voices with all the faithful in every time and place who forever sing to the glory of your name.
Holy, holy, holy Lord, God of power and might, heaven and earth are full of your glory. Hosanna in the highest. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest.
Almighty God, as we gather here today, as we gather with many different things on our hearts, some joys, some concerns, some sorrow, some not sure of where you're leading them, we ask that this time in fellowship that we have together with one another is encouraging, that it's enlightening, that it reminds us that we don't have to walk through the valley of the shadow of darkness alone. Because you have called us to live in community with one another. You have called us to love each other, to support one another through all times, both high and low. As we sit and as we come to this table then, O Lord, we remember those who are not able to come. And we ask that you give us the passion, O Lord, to strengthen those who are weak, to curb those who are strong, so that all, Lord, may come to your table and be at peace. Great is the mystery of faith. Christ is risen.
Christ is risen. Christ will come again.
Lord, remember that the church you made is made up of many parts, And each part has different gifts. Each part comes from different languages and cultures. And so, Lord, we take this time today to pray the prayer that your Son, Jesus Christ, taught us to say. Saying, Our Father,
Who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever.
Friends, when that night when Christ was with his disciples, they were having another meal together. They are having another meal, and Jesus was around table with people who were quite an interesting group. He was with fishermen, tax collectors, sinners, and saints alike, and he even sat at table with Judas, the one who he knew would betray him. But even knowing all those things, Christ took the bread, and as he broke it, he gave thanks and said, "Take and eat. This is my body broken for you. Whenever you eat of it, do this in remembrance of me." And in a like manner, Christ took the cup. And Christ said, "This cup represents the sign of the new covenant sealed in my blood for the forgiveness of sins. Whenever you drink from it, do this in remembrance of me." Friends, as I said before, the table is set. It is prepared to give us the strength that we need, to allow us to reignite those passions, those gifts, so that we can offer them and share them with one another. So let us come and feast. give you thanks for this meal of simple bread and cup. May it give us new insight to the world around us. May it allow us to go out with energy and vigor as we go and do the work that you have called us to do. Amen. Our final hymn this morning is hymn number 400, When We Are Living.
And may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you now and forevermore. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost.
Amen.